I'm a manufacturer. I run a family-owned business, third generation. We employ about 130 people, 130 families looking to us for their support and their livelihood. But I'm passionate about the manufacturing strategy, the industrial strategy that seems to be growing. The government's made very, very significant progress, in my view, on meeting some of its fiscal mandate. I think everybody understands that, everybody understands and implicitly agrees for the need for stronger growth. But I also think that most of us would agree that in terms of delivering that, our own report card as a country is not particularly strong. We haven't delivered a good job in that economic performance improvement. And I'm delighted to agree with all of our speakers. It's in danger of being a bit cosy, but after decades of pariah status, in the last 5 or so years, the current government and the previous government, there's been a re-emergence, a consensus that industrial policy is on everybody's radar, on all political parties' radar, and most recently with Lord Heseltine's report, we're also seeing it broadly welcomed by all the key parties. So, we've got an interesting position. Manufacturers believe that levels of investment are insufficient, and yet we've got a large number of manufacturers sitting on a large number of cash piles. That money's not being reinvested. And I have to infer from that that there's insufficiently compelling reason for that money to be reinvested. That point was made earlier by Lord Heseltine. We're part of a global economy. We need to give our businesses, not just manufacturers, but all of our businesses, both domestic and overseas, a reason to come and invest with us. We have an economy as a result that's largely stagnant, and we are not actually delivering that much vaunted rebalancing that we've heard about through new industry and jobs and through the current administration. And as a mid-sized manufacturer, and from my perspective, I begin to wonder why this might be. As an MD, I run my business, and the key thing that I look to provide by my employees, my customers, my suppliers, and my bank is a defined strategic vision. And I would call that a business plan in my business vernacular speak, but it's a vision that everything that I do and my employees do hangs from. I would find it incredibly difficult to borrow money. I'd fail to recruit, I'd fail to retain the best staff, and quite rightly, I'd probably be out of a job. Now, I think there are parallels here. Besides manufacturers being especially capital intense and therefore taking a much longer view in terms of making those investment decisions, I think it is unconscionable that we as a country, as an economy, do not have a long-term vision. This isn't party political. This isn't a siren call back to the 70s and picking winners. I think it's basic common sense. So, from my perspective, if post-recession we simply go back to where we were, it is no longer good enough. We won't get back to growth. We won't deliver growth. It's no longer a comparison as to what we've done before in this country. It's a comparison with all of our competing economies worldwide. We've got to win that investment into this country. So I draw 3 parallels, and I'll keep them brief. In my business, if I'm going to have a compelling strategic vision, I need to be able to demonstrate why it's a good decision for the banks to stay with me and invest with me. So from a government perspective, what am I looking for? I'm looking for a clear, long-term view of what that better balanced economy is going to be. I'm not asking the government to tell me what the sectors are. I'm asking them to tell me why I've got predictability and stability to invest against. This has to stretch, in my view, beyond the standard fixed parliamentary term. No businesses that I'm aware of, certainly none in the manufacturing sector, work on that basis. I've had screams of derision when I've suggested this before, from both sides of the political spectrum, as how utterly out of touch I am. But I think we need it. We deserve it in manufacturing, that we have that consensus, that long-term view. That long-term view is a strategic view. I'm not asking for consensus on policies. Those tactical levers by which we're going to deliver that long-term vision can differ. But I think we need consensus on what those top-level strategic priorities are going to be. The second is, my bank would expect me to have cross-departmental agreement. All of my heads of department, all of my senior managers bought into that strategic plan, and to be able to demonstrate why they're signed up to it. So the analogy in government is I would expect cross-departmental commitment, absolutely clear commitment to drive for growth as unambiguously as we see that drive for deficit reduction. It's quite clear there. But unfortunately, we don't have a Ministry for Economy here. We have a Ministry for Tax. So whenever we look to pull a lever, we pull a fiscal lever. That's an important part of it, but there's so much more. I think if we're going to have that cross-departmental accountability, we need clear leadership. And my view is it has to be led by the PM. I see few things more important to the future of our country than getting growth back into the economy on a sustainable, long-term, 10, 15, 20-year footing. That means I think it needs to be led by the PM, and we need to have some very clear milestones. Now, the equivalent with deficit reduction is the Independent Office of Budget Responsibility to report on performance. I think we need an equivalent independent body that's used to audit those results. And I'd pick 4 key performance indicators. I call them KPIs. I'm from industry. 4 milestones, if you like. There could be others. I think it's imperative we lower the cost of doing business in the UK. Tax is an important part of that, but it's one small part. We've got cost of energy. We've got how we're going to skill up, as Lord Adonis has just said, skill up our youngsters for the future. The number of schools I've been to where the implicit understanding is you've failed if you become an apprentice and don't go to university. It's criminal. Now, some of my best and brightest managers are my apprentices of yesterday, and we take them through university. You see that on the continent. Why can't some of our other SMEs in the UK do this as well, rather than simply rely on our biggest companies to do that? I think we need a growth in the number of exporting companies. I think we need a growth in the number of mid-cap companies. I enjoyed the analogy that Lord Hasseltine has in his report for the rainforest. The top canopy of large trees, the mid-canopy and the seedlings growing underneath. I'm an SME, and I'm part of the supply chain. I'm making to my customers' prints. I don't own the intellectual property. It's incredibly important that holistic supply chain approach is recognised, but we can't support everybody. We can't unilaterally decide at a government level that we're going to support every start-up business. And we do need to identify those key factors that are going to make smaller companies successful, tomorrow's high-growth exporters, and invest in those. We've touched on a better trained, more productive, more flexible labour force already. I'm passionate about that. We need the same respect for the vocational training in this country as we do for the academic. And finally, my bank would expect that I don't have a bloated overhead, and that they can see that the structure that I've got to deliver this is fit for purpose. And the analogy here, in my view, is that Whitehall is too big and too dysfunctional to deliver the goals that I've just outlined, centrally, unaided, and from within. I think this is the other half of the equation. I think businesses and business people now have a responsibility to step up and help the government form and drive this at a local level. If we expect our government to do it on our own, we're going to be back to where we were before. So finally, as we start 2013, I think we're in a perilous state if we fail to restore economic growth. But economic growth, I don't think it's the government's responsibility. I think it's businesses' responsibility. The government's responsibility is to take the vision for that and give us the predictability to invest against it. So in the spirit of no stone unturned, I think it's time to cement this debate and for our government to look forward to taking our industrial policy into the rest of this century. Thank you very much.